Hello everyone, this is Jose Simerilla Romero's. We're back with another video on vocal technique. However, this one is a little different. If you've been following this channel, you know I spent a lot of time breaking down technique and talking a lot about vocal technique, but more specifically, always towards the beginner and intermediate singer. Yes, there are a lot of things that I've said that can be applied to advanced singers in the professional level, of course. But for the most part, I've stuck to helping those who are just getting started. It's been a goal of mine because I feel like I myself didn't have someone to help me really understand the voice, especially the tenor voice, when I was first starting out, to get me on the right path. So a lot of my videos are for people who are still dealing with basic things like struggling with high notes, tension, and overall understanding the vocal mechanism. A lot about what I've been sort of preaching until now has been about releasing tension, learning to let the chord stretch and thin, staying in this falsetto friendly position, using the falsetto and the open throat as a posture, and then developing and building strength in that posture. You've probably practiced the yodeling, the vocal crack, phonating and vibrating everything, using the falsetto as a development tool, sighing, moaning, opening the throat, the snarl, a phonation that deals with flowness, easiness, the minimum amount of adduction, just enough to connect that beautiful falsetto feeling and apply it to the full voice. I can tell you that 99% of all singers fail because they never truly master that gentle, elastic stretch. On day one, they are yelling or muscling and forcing their way towards the high note. But now, what happens once you have built that foundation? What happens when you've built that healthy top? Perhaps you've been already studying and training for quite a few years. Those high Bs, those high Cs, you can float them beautifully. You can arrive to them in a very gentle, easy manner. The chords are stretched, they're thin. You have access from the bottom of your range all the way to the top of your range, and you have adduction. It could be very thin edge adduction, very minimum, but you have it. Well, perhaps you might be asking, what now? What's next? How do I add more resonance? How do I add more volume, vocal color, that heroic romantic tenor color? Increase the air pressure, the adduction, so that the sound increases in resonance and volume without adding the thickness, the heft, and losing that vocal freedom, that versatility, that flexibility. Well, that is where the Melocchi method comes in. And yes, this is advanced work. This is not for the faint of heart. So I'm going to take this time to be very, very clear and clear as possible. This video is not for beginner singers. It's not for intermediate singers. If you're still struggling with your passaggio, if you're still fighting with tension in the high notes, if you haven't yet mastered the concepts I've laid out in my previous videos, stop watching. This video isn't for you. Go back and review my other videos. Who is this video for? Well, this video is more for the advanced singer, like I mentioned previously. A singer who already has a fully accessible top register, middle register, and lower register. A voice that stretches, doesn't squeeze, doesn't force, doesn't yell or grunt, stretches. A voice that has closure through thinness, in that posture of thinness and release, not force. And a singer who has a very good balance and understanding already of their connection from their voice to their breath and their body. So again, this video is for those who are looking to level up, not for those who are trying to build from scratch. So as I mentioned again previously, everything I've taught on this channel up until now has been focused on laying a healthy foundation. And for good reason. Most singers struggle with the same thing. They approach their sound and they approach singing, especially in the high notes, with tension, pushing, manipulating, instead of releasing, letting go. Instead of allowing the chords to thin and stretch, they press, they squeeze, they try to yell their way into resonance. That doesn't work. So I have spent video after video teaching from, again, my experiences, how to find that healthy, thin posture through falsetto coordination. How to release the voice upwards, not drive it. How to thin and stretch the chords. How to sing in falsetto correctly with an open throat and connect it to the full-bodied sound. And of course, how to use the vocal crack or the yodel as a teaching mechanism, as a tool, not as something to run away from, but something that allows you to find looseness and a great tool to release tension in the sound by switching vocal registers back and forth, falsetto, full voice, falsetto, full voice. Almost using the falsetto as a template, as a guide. This was mainly the Garcia foundation, the Gili and Lauri-Volpi approach. A lot of information that I received that I thought was absolutely invaluable through the wonderful videos of Jack Livigny and through my personal sessions with the great Salvatore Fisichella, as well as many other tenors who talk about very, very similar concepts and sensations to release, to be gentle in the sound, and to establish a healthy basic foundation from the bottom to the top. They all taught the same thing: verticality, release, brightness, chord closure through ease. Not force. You don't need to be loud to be correct. You need to be efficient. And once you've built that kind of voice, once you have these concepts well placed, then, and only then, in my opinion, should you think about adding size, depth, power to the voice. And this is where the Melocchi method comes in. My first experience with the Melocchi method was, quite honestly, very traumatic. I was introduced to it way too early. I hadn't yet developed true closure through stretch. I didn't know how to sing with height, or how to allow the chords to stay thin and agile. I hadn't yet discovered the easiness of singing in this beautiful falsetto-like posture and letting the body support the sound sul fiato, on the breath, instead of tension. So what happened? Since I didn't have any of these foundational pillars of knowledge in my technique, well, I did what most people do if they're introduced to the Melocchi method day one. I dropped the larynx, muscled it as much as I could, but everything else followed. My voice got very artificially dark, heavier, less flexible. I lost notes that I used to have, and I gained absolutely nothing except injury and confusion. The voice had no easiness, had no flexibility. It was just thick and tense and rigid, like a rock. I didn't enjoy singing. The audience for sure didn't enjoy listening to me sing. Nobody enjoys listening to someone try to yell through an aria. My stamina was very, very poor. Sometimes I couldn't get through one aria, let alone two. So competitions, auditions, concerts were a complete misery, because in the back of your mind you're thinking, well, I hope they don't choose a second one, which is absolutely ridiculous, because as singers we should have the ability to sing for hours, without tiring. An operatic role is 2 to 3 hours long. So this was absolutely not possible for me. And at the time, I swore off the method. I said, never again will I do this. But I was too young and too naive to realize that it wasn't the method's fault. I was introduced to it too early. And this, in my opinion, is what I see all the time. People try to start with the Melocchi method before they've earned it, before they've built the body, the technique, the understanding that can withstand it. The way I see it is very easily like going to the gym. But in this case, it's going to the gym for the very first time. Perhaps you're out of shape, maybe even injured. But the first thing you do is head straight to the 100-pound dumbbells. You think you're making progress, but all you're doing is hurting yourself. Your form is terrible. You can't really even lift the weight, so you're using all other muscles to try to force it out. And as a result, you can very, very easily injure yourself. What you should do is first, well, get in shape, improve your cardio, get lean, learn proper form, quality over quantity. Build stability, balance, and range of motion. Then, once you're healthy and conditioned, then you can start lifting heavier, growing more, reinforcing what you've already built. This is how I perceive and how I visualize arriving at the Melocchi method. The Melocchi method is strength training for the voice, but it has to come after health, after easiness, after clarity. I believe this with full conviction, that out of 100 singers who attempt the Melocchi method, only 3 or 4 come out successful. The rest, well, they burn out. They lose the range. They blow their chords, or worse, they sustain an injury that ruins their instrument altogether. Or they quit singing because it doesn't come easy. It's not comfortable. They sing in public this way before they're ready, and they get harshly criticized, so they quit. And why do they burn out? Well, because they think that effort equals volume. They think that just dropping the larynx is enough, because they're trying to sound dramatic before they've learned to sound correct. You can't just be a good student to survive the Melocchi method and follow whatever your teacher is saying. You need to be a smart student, strategic, aware, and very, very patient, with a good mind and body connection. Never do anything that starts to accrue pain. Uncomfortability, okay, might be normal to be a bit uncomfortable because you're trying new things. But pain is when you want to stop. Pain is that beautiful message that your body is telling you, stop. Intelligence before impact. If you approach the Melocchi method correctly, it does work. I'm not saying it doesn't, and I do not want this video to be misinterpreted as abstaining from the Melocchi method. Absolutely not. I'm actually a big fan of it, but only after you've built a voice that can handle the increased resistance and pressure that is necessary for this type of singing and training. And that's the key word here, resistance. This method is built on muscular opposition, not brute force, but structure. You are reinforcing what already works. And you're not learning to sing this way, you're learning to train this way. So what am I talking about here? Let's talk about what the Melocchi method actually teaches. A quote by the wonderful and legendary Marcello Del Monaco. You can only sing with a very low, very deep larynx. Melocchi's method depends on the maximum descent of the larynx. Not a casually low position, but a deliberate and deep one. Another quote by Del Monaco. One can have resonances in the mask, but the principal fact remains that the larynx must remain low. The mask, like I've actually talked about before, is not the goal. It's a result. La maschera is not achieved by shoving sound. That will usually lead to a nasal, squeezed, tight, low resonant sound. If you lift the larynx, because you're trying to shove sound in the maschera, you'll lose the depth. You'll lose stability. And eventually you could also damage yourself. There is only one vocal placement. Another quote by Del Monaco. The passaggio is scrupulously gathered. The whole voice is gathered from top to bottom. There is only one position. This is actually something that Maestro Fisichella told me. He says, as long as you keep gola aperta, laringe stretta, and bocca chiusa, talking about open throat, narrow larynx, small mouth, and everything is sung sul fiato, on the breath, well supported, then the passaggio doesn't exist. You as a singer are only sustaining a posture, one position, and the larynx will tilt, untilt whenever it wants. You don't have to think about covering, uncovering, singing passaggio, when to sing the passaggio, primo passaggio. No, you think one position. This idea is total unification. One tube. You have a hose, right? This is your hose or your valve. The valve must remain open. And there's only one tube, just like when you open the valve of a sink and the water flushes out, and then you close the valve so the water stops. Same thing here. We open the valve. And now we're ready for air to rush out freely. But we never close the valve midway as we're singing. We keep everything open, expanded. One place, one posture. The chords stretch and thin as we ascend, but the frame, the posture remains strong. It never corrupts or is disturbed because you are singing higher or lower. It's always the same. And this goes a little bit hand in hand with my latest video about having an invisible ball or thinking that you have an invisible ball. That ball must always, when you open the throat, stay floating, round, spacious, tall, but never allow it to collapse or get crushed. One posture. The onset must be clean. A quote by Arturo Melocchi. He says, "Tell Mario del Monaco that he must try using the half voice, but with a low larynx and a high soft palate that never drops, whether the intervals ascend or descend." Another quote, "Sing only with the vowel oo. Retract the lower jaw." So this is not retracting, this is a very tense forward jaw. Retract it. Work slowly, one semitone at a time. This approach is methodical, deliberate, and slow. And most of all, it demands a clear chord level attack. It is never breathy or airy, and it is never artificially darkened. That's not what the Melocchi method is. The sound must land on the chords, not below them. A, E, O, U. The sound is here on the chords and taller, but never on the chords and below. This will add to the artificial ingolato type singing. But it's a bright, articulate, well-supported sound. A, E, O, U. Very different to a lot of the beginning or intermediate concepts. There's a lot more air pressure involved. And even though the goal is still to maintain the chord stretchy and thin, there is an increase in subglottic pressure on the attack. But when you release the subglottic pressure, that's when this wave of sound, strong, heroic quality starts to be achieved, when the walls start to vibrate. This method is not for the shy, which is actually a thing. I think a lot of singers who are themselves shy, perhaps a bit introvert, perhaps speak a little bit more like this because they're not used to or perhaps comfortable being loud themselves or having a lot of attention, are going to struggle overall with a vocal development for operatic singing. This is not for the shy. You need to allow yourself and be okay with being very obnoxiously loud. This is also not for the untrained, like I mentioned, or for the singer who's still trying to find their voice. This method is for the advanced singer who wants to add heroic strength to their already easy voice. A singer that has range, that understands how to release the sound. It's not here, but here. The slow diaphragmic ascension that squeezes the lungs, and the resistance, that resistance allowing for there to be a generous stream, but pressurized stream of air coming into contact with the vocal cords, starting vibration and being released. A singer who already has clarity in their sound and now wants to add perhaps more impact. It's not for people who are afraid to make a sound. This is athlete level training. Singers who are perhaps trying to take the next level into more dense orchestral roles and role preparation and are ready to sing in bigger stages. If that's not you just yet, that's fine. You're on the journey. I started singing completely spread my first couple of years in school, without understanding any idea or concept of opening the throat. Then, as I mentioned, someone introduced to me the Melocchi method, a deeper laryngeal method, and that took me to the extreme other direction. Then I went back and forth and back and forth and back, absorbing knowledge from many, many different teachers and singers, building my own knowledge through experience and being on stage, failing, making mistakes, screwing it up, both in the practice room and on a performance. It's not the end of the world. We all make mistakes and we all fail. That's all part of the learning. After learning myself this idea of easiness in the tone and singing with lots of flexibility, have I then introduced slowly, in increments, gently, this sort of training, strength training in the sound, this Melocchi method. However, if you're not there yet, stay with my other videos. I will continue to put out content for the beginner and intermediate, of course. Build that foundation. Master the falsetto. Find the yodel. Build closure through stretch. Release into your top. And then once you're ready, we can reinforce the voice that you have now worked so hard to build. And we can train it with purpose, with precision, and with presence. I'll leave you with some wonderful quotes from some of the best students of Arturo Melocchi, as well as Arturo Melocchi himself. A quote from Arturo Melocchi to one of his students. Sing around 20 minutes per day, only with the vowel U, forcing yourself after D natural to open the mouth, retracting the lower jaw. Choose no more than 3 notes. And like this, go up 1 semitone at a time until F, even F sharp. Mind you, the exercise is the upper octave. It's very tiring. So don't get scared if it will give you some hoarseness. Interesting how Arturo already himself talks about this uncomfortability. And I think 20 minutes per day is a great way to gradually start working it. If you find hoarseness or pain, stop. Stop. Give yourself time to rest. And don't go back into the exercise until you feel fresh and normal again. A quote that we already have talked about from Arturo Melocchi to Marcello Del Monaco, but I find very interesting. Tell Mario that he should try, indeed, he must try, using the half voice. Whether the interval ascends or descends. The half voice. Very interesting that he's already talking about mezza voce, which includes a lot of the concepts that I speak about in my previous videos. Again, the Melocchi method has gotten a bad reputation of that the singing must be forced, must be yelled, must masculinity. It's about testosterone. And it's not. Very interesting that he uses that idea of half voice to find thinness and stretch. That's the advice he's giving Mario. A quote from the great Franco Corelli. The lowered larynx permits you to have a vibrant, strong, brilliant voice, like steel, but it does tend to prevent you from singing sweetly. It also can cause problems with mezza voce and legato. Again, another interesting quote from Franco. Why is he saying that this sort of method prevents you from singing sweetly or has problems with mezza voce and legato? Interestingly enough, the more piano, the more mezza voce, the more of that color of the voice we include in the voice, the less air pressure, the more the chords tend to loosen a bit. And this method, it revolves all around very clear, strong adduction. Lots of air pressure. Again, very interesting to compare and contrast what they said with what they did. Another quote by Franco. With the laryngeal method, you must know your vocal organ very well. What you can do and how far you can go. With this technique, you can make your vocal cords suffer. Now, this is a wonderful quote that goes straight into what we talked about, not just being a good student, but being a smart student. A good student just does what their teacher just says, brainlessly, without any sort of method or strategy themselves. They follow blindly. If it hurts, it hurts. If it's painful, well, it's painful. My teacher's telling me to do it. He knows more than I. Let me just push through the pain. No, you must know how far you can go. Work smartly. If you are suffering, if there's pain, stop. Stop. Better to get rest and then continue than to push through your limits and risk injury. A quote by Marcello Del Monaco. In this method, the voice is trained using the vowel U, and only later E, I, O, A. When singing, the chest should be the first to resonate. Only the chest voice gives the singer broad and deep support of the sound. Again, this method is built on clear attack, bright vowels in a wonderful open space. A, E, I. The U vowel should not be U. You must find brightness, squealo, and resistance in that U. Oh! 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 Only then open to an I, E, O, A. But it must come from this U valvula, this U valve position. Even working on UH helps a lot. A quote by Gianfranco Cecchele. He taught me the Melocchi method. In a few months' time, my voice was transformed. The volume increased, the beauty of the timbre was always present, and my high notes became secure. A high D flat included. This is also very interesting to hear, because as we sing more in the body, as we increase the air pressure and we feel the appoggio kick in, we do feel an element of groundness. We feel that as we ascend, no matter how scary or how risky it might feel, we can always trust this to be our grounding support. So instead of where we're trying to find a falsetto position with a very high larynx, everything very spread, everything quite wobbly. Approach these two concepts and find the middle ground for you. Free the sound first. Learn the Manuel Garcia method, a method that allows you to be confident and approach the bottom of your voice all the way to the top with comfortability and ease. And only then integrate the Melocchi method to reinforce and strengthen what you have learned. Another quote by Franco Corelli. Yes, it is a laryngeal school of singing. You go against the breath with your singing, practically speaking, since you use pressure of the breath there. These muscles of the larynx must work more. You must appoggiare upon the vocal cords themselves. This is a quote from one of Franco Corelli's students, Enrique Pina. He says, Franco Corelli pushed down on my Adam's apple while I was singing. Many who studied with Corelli didn't stay long enough to learn his method in depth. He himself said, it's not something you can learn in a day. It takes years and requires a great deal of patience. Again, gradual training, slow and steady wins the race. Another quote by Marcello Del Monaco. You have to use the E vowel up to a G flat because it has a similar effect of the vowel U. E, U, E, U, E, U. After so many months with the U, I will suggest you to start vocalizing with E, trying to almost avoid the first octave. Interesting. I believe it was also Marcello Del Monaco who talked about how when he practiced, he trained the Melocchi method. But when he went on stage, he left the Melocchi method at home and he sang in a way that was easeful to him. So, in other words, use this method as a strength training exercise daily, 15 to 20 minutes. It won't be the method that you use to sing. It'll be the method to develop the muscles and the strength so that when you go on stage to sing, normally, easefulness, gently, what used to be difficult and hard before will now be easy. Again, just like training in the gym. If you are training for strength, perhaps right now 20 pounds is too heavy. Maybe you can lift it once or twice, but it's not a weight that you're comfortable in. So when it comes to a competition, or if you're performing in front of an audience, you're going to lift the 10 pounds because that's more comfortable. But when you train, you're going to train little by little into strengthening yourself to be able to lift those 20 pounds easier, and train it privately in your gym at home so that those 20 pounds feel like the 10 pounds. And over time, you're going to be able to lift those 20 pounds. And now 20 pounds feels quite easy. It's the 30 pounds now that feel a bit uncomfortable. So again, you go to a public event, you have a competition or you have a performance, but now instead of the 10 pounds, you're lifting the 20 pounds easily. And at home, you're training for the 30 pounds. And the cycle continues, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, until what was once perhaps forceful and tenseful and thick is now your new gentle, your new free, your new easy. This is how I integrate the Melocchi method into my training. When I'm on stage, I want easiness of tone, I want gentle, I want easy high notes. But at home, I am training constantly, finding more depth, more richness, singing more in the body, more deepness of the larynx, and being able to put two and two together, these two methods of singing, so that you're not just singing high notes, but being blocked out by the orchestra. But you're not also screaming your way without any ability to sing any high notes. You need both the volume, the resonance, the timbre, the quality of color that the Melocchi method gives you, with the easiness, the stretch, the thinness, the gentle approach that the Garcia method gives you. A controlled or pressurized yell with lots of space. So these are my thoughts, my opinions on the Melocchi method. As I always say, these are my experiences, my observations. If you don't agree with them, that's totally fine. No one's forcing you to. However, if you find it interesting, if you're applying these things and you're getting progress and it's helping you, that's what the channel is for, to be able to help. Even just one or two of you will make all of this worth it. Let me know in the comments if you would like me to speak a little bit more about this method, perhaps include exercises, go deeper into what the great singers thought about when it came to this method, as well as sharing my own experiences with it. Drop a comment in the comment section. I would love to hear what you guys say. What are your experiences with it? How has it helped you? How has it perhaps not benefited you? And build the spark to continue these sort of conversations going through this beautiful community. As always, like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. Check out my other recent content. Become a YouTube member, as I am planning more and more to interact through members-only live streams, as well as priority replies to members only and many, many other benefits that you can check out in the link in the description. And of course, becoming a member to this channel helps me continue to create content like this for everyone. Like always, continue studying, continue practicing. The work continues. Ciao, ciao for now.